What is up, world? Pardon me as I just get. So, why every CEO needs a RevOps leader? This is such an important topic, and I want to give a shout out to Amy and Full Cast for being a sponsor of this webinar, a sponsor of the Rev Genius community, a massive supporter for all things revenue, RevOps, and all the above. And she's spectacular. Full Cast is spectacular. She'll tell you about a cool offer. I don't want to steal her thunder there. And then we have a special guest with us as well, Whitney Merrill, VP of Sales with ArcServe. And I'll let you all introduce yourself a little more, but welcome everybody. It's so great to have you.
Thanks so much, Jared. It is so great to be here, and you know how much we love Rev Genius and you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with us today. I am so excited that Whitney is here. He is a full cast advisor. Jared is a full cast partner, and we're very grateful to be able to talk about why every CEO needs a RevOps leader. For every CEO, you have to have a strategic person who is on the control panel. And I'm not going to give away the analogy. Instead, I'm going to introduce Whitney, who is our full cast advisor and our VP of sales at ArcServe. And Whitney, your journey is so interesting to me, coming from your background into RevOps and now into head of sales. So, first of all, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you, Amy, for having me here. And Jared, I'm so excited to be here. Amy, you and I have done this a few times before, but this is a new forum for me to do this in this venue. So really, thanks for having me. And I'm super excited to go and
Likewise.
go on the journey with you, right? Shall we say?
Well, this is such a journey. I'm really glad to be able to just chat openly with us. And I love the forum that Jared has together where we're riffing off of each other and we're all of the same mind, right? But Winnie, tell us a little bit about your background and why you feel so passionately about RevOps having a strategic seat at the table.
Great. So I've been in sales, technology sales, and sales operations my entire career. I had done a number of implementations of CRMs, right? And this is a while back, right? But to do Salesforce and bring it in and saw the impact of that for a sales organization. And this is back at a time when the cloud was relatively new. But I saw that and I said, wow, that is a transformational, moving from spreadsheets to a cloud SaaS platform. And I went to work at Salesforce, which was super exciting. And I got to see an early stage evolution of Salesforce where it was. They had a lot of challenges and opportunities at the time. One of them for them was in the security space with multi-tenancy and how now we take it for granted, but back then that was very important. And so I then went to work at VeriSign, a security company, which was acquired by Symantec. And so a $1 billion company is acquired by a $5 billion company to go transform security in the security software space. And this is where my RevOps journey really started, because in you taking a product that is part of a larger organization and you have to shift it from a point solution product into subscription, change the route to market and the strategy and the enablement and bring the sales teams along. It's an evolutionary shift for an organization. And so I raised my hands to do an early stage version of RevOps, right? You take some sales engineers and you take some trainers, you take some BDRs and SDRs, maybe a thought leader or two, and you go start hacking it out of the wilderness. And we did. We built, you had to think end to end, because in software and subscription, you're not just thinking sales and bookings. You're thinking about leads and marketing and the flow and the process and customer care and retention and all these elements. And so I ultimately continued doing that in my career, taking on more and more responsibility. At times, I would take sales organizations as well as having the operations piece, because sometimes you need to drive transformation of people and processes at the same time you're doing it. And so I've done those roles. I followed along on that career journey. And then ultimately I went to Equinix, where I had RevOps for VP RevOps there, driving the transformation and really helping them do that, right? The journey that I think we're here to talk about today and the conversation is the fact that technology has changed so rapidly and so quickly in the world that we're in, that what perhaps could have been done 5, 10, 15 years ago in a revenue operations role is no longer, you can't do it that way anymore. You have to
Mm,
be at a strategic seat level. And then that's
yes.
what we're here to talk about. And there's a metaphor we're going to lean into in this, but that is the thing that has really changed, especially with AI coming on board. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to talk about that.
Likewise. So, Whitney, we prepared a few slides for all of you guys, and we can see you in the chat. So, thank you so much for joining us. You know, George and Milan and Dave and Danny and all of you that are posting in the chat. So, thank you, and keep sending us questions. We love to see them. One thing that is really interesting to me is that RevOps has such a great track record. So companies that prioritize it see at least 15% boost in efficiency and 20% more innovation. It's alignment, it's very strategic, and yet there are many people that are not doing it yet. So 68% of companies lack a go-to-market launch plan. And even though the companies with a defined launch plan see a 10% increase in success rates. So, Whitney, tell us a little bit about like, how is this all changing? And when you said, things that worked 15 years ago don't work now, why do you think that is?
Because the speed at which we have to solve problems for the go-to-market organization and revenue ops has happened, and it's gone incrementally faster and faster and faster. Where you
Mm,
used to be able to do a planning cycle, an annual planning cycle with some spreadsheets and a bunch of resources, you're now required to do it in real time. You're doing
mhm.
capacity planning, change planning, what if scenarios in real time, and that's the speed at which business is going. If you are running that old way of doing the model, it doesn't work today. And you have to think that mindset and shift that for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared, do you have any comments on this? You see this every day in the community.
And it's funny because this starts at the top, and as a founder, I don't want to say that it's our fault for not setting this, but the founder owns go to market, right? So like aligning yourself with somebody, like if you're average at go to market, like myself and maybe other founders, finding a superstar to align with is just kind of common sense, in my opinion. And somebody with like objective goals, like across the organization, versus, dare I use the word, siloed goals. And it's their role to align everything and make sure it's less that. So of course this doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, I think as we're talking, this fits in so well with our metaphor of the changing speed of business. Business has to be instantaneous, and we can't have just empty vessels of CRMs anymore. We have AI now that teaches where we expect a response and we expect a done for you solution, right? So that is a real challenge.
And
So
you can't have, if I can, you can't have those silos, right, of sales and
exactly.
marketing and customer care. You can't, back to being the founder or the CEO, you can't
Mhm.
be the one navigating across them. You need RevOps. You need a function that does that for you, because the decision making and insights are at this layer of decision, right? Which is a different speed than occurred before in business.
Why do you think, Whitney, that things are speeding up so quickly?
Well, you first of all have technology that has evolved, and the
Yeah.
speed of which compute and power and data and insights and
Mhm,
information is
mhm.
coming at you, right? And so that means that those people new entering the marketplace can move faster and quicker, right? That are
Yep.
there.
Mhm.
And those that are in the marketplace are having to navigate faster through this process. I mean, it is about navigation in this world that's happening. And everybody has so much more data and so much more speed. So now I've got to be able to do it at that speed, right? And so
Absolutely right.
those
Yeah.
pauses you might have allowed for before are just not available in the current business landscape.
Otherwise, you see some of these enterprises who are just getting absolutely
Yeah.
crushed by the
Yeah.
disruptors, and that agility is one of those main reasons, right? They
Yep.
just can't keep up with the speed.
Yep.
What's interesting to me is even though, most of us recognize the insane power of RevOps, 35% of companies are building them. such a low percentage compared to what we know is needed. And 48% don't even have RevOps at all. So what do you think is preventing this from happening, Whitney?
Well, I think it is executive leadership thinking they can do it without this, right? You're looking at an old model of doing business and saying, well, that worked before, right? But here we
Mhm.
are with disruption, digital transformation, AI that are happening, right? And so I think what I think we're here to do and talk about today is to posit that one of the solutions to the problem you have, CEO, executive leader, is elevating RevOps to give you the insights at that layer so that you can perform. It's a lot of people have not seen it work effectively. Now, I've had the
Mhm.
good fortune to be in organizations to work with leadership teams that did it and invested in it and grew and understood that. But many people have not. When I bring up RevOps to some people, they say, "What's that?" Right? They just haven't
Mhm.
seen it, or they hear it and it's done in name only and it's not done at the insight layer, right? The AI is not there, the systems are not there, the speed is not put in place. So you're going to have executives and leaders that don't understand it, but we're here to say it can be done and there's modeling to do, and we're here to talk about it, right? And give a metaphor for you, right?
Oh, absolutely. I love that. All right. Well, so lay the metaphor on us, Whitney.
Yeah, so the traditional sales ops role, or the old role of an engineer, right, is be in the engine room, right?
Mhm.
And we use the metaphor of Star Trek. And the Star Trek metaphor is you have engineering, you have a spaceship, which is your company, and your that revenue is propelling your spaceship through space, right? Now, the reason we're bringing this metaphor forward, unfortunately, it's an older version of Star Trek, but when we look in the old Captain Kirk and Scotty days, you had a metaphor that shows this environment, right? You have a warp matter engine that has to move at light speed, right? You have the engineering that has to drive that, which manages all the ship's functions. But you also need that chief engineer as part of the leadership team on the deck, helping make command and control decisions with the captain to go do that. And you also have another variable in play. It is the computer, which in this case, we're talking about being AI. The only reason that Scotty and the metaphor of Star Trek can come up to the engine room and be there, not only because he has an engineering crew, but he also has the computer. He has AI doing a lot of the automated and manual functions so that he can spend time on the insights and the decision making as part of the leadership team.
Mm.
And in this metaphor, Captain Kirk is the CEO or the CRO or whatever, a CFO, whatever lever you want to say. And they understand the value of that. They understand how important it is to have that engineer as part of that leadership team, in addition to all the other characters that we won't, go into in the metaphor, right? But if you don't have that engineer up there when you're in a fight and when the systems are down or when you need to shift, right? You need that leader to be able to go execute that for you. And that person has to be on the deck.
I love that metaphor so much. The first time that you told me about that, Whitney, when we were doing a blog together, it was literally mind blowing to me. I was like, how could there be a more perfect metaphor than what we're trying to do here is bring Scotty down from the boilerplate. I remember one of the episodes where James he like beeps down to the boiler room and Scotty's like, I'm giving her all she's got, Captain.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And but yet there's that constant communication, but he's still down there in the boiler room.
Yeah.
And when you're like, no, he needs to be up on the deck. And then you showed me a clip where he is working with the computer.
Yes.
And that's the strategic lead that we need so they can talk in real time. And so everything can be integrated and fully aligned. One of the things to me, Whitney, after I started really thinking about this metaphor a lot more, is I did a little research into business systems and what's been in the past. And I thought,
Ah, yeah.
why is it? Why how did it get started that things were siloed? That things were so hierarchical? That things were so defined with a division of labor? And my PhD is in organizational communication, and I did a lot of organizational theory. So I went back to my books, and all of a sudden the light bulb turned on, and I thought, this is what we've been heralding as the apex of business strategy since the Industrial Revolution. This is how business was done to be efficient and to help businesses grow. Then digital transformation comes in and starts
Yeah.
throwing wrenches into everything. And then companies, these enterprises, they're not flying anymore because the old ways are not working. Yet there was no one, like you said, manning the strategic arm when you're trying to input the computers and you're trying to use digital transformation. There was nobody on deck. And so to me, what's so exciting about RevOps and what you've been sharing with this analogy is that we now have the opportunity as revenue operations leaders to help take business itself, the way that business is done, and move it into the future in a way that's never been done before. So what are your comments on that, both of you guys?
I'm just thinking about like what caused this, and like thinking back to working early stage companies 12 years ago where they just hired sales.
Yep.
The salespeople beat the table saying, we need a marketing person to drive us leads. The CEO listening to them, sales like controlled everything. And we wonder why we got into this problem. Like marketing was second fiddle in at least one organization. I remember at another, they were growth, and actually the outbound started reporting to them. Still no RevOps, but we're at some interesting evolution here, right?
Absolutely.
But I think the challenge is or the challenge has been as founders thinking too myopically towards the next quarter, the next month, and just doing everything and thinking that setting ops up, because we all know ops people, they you slow down to speed up, and them not realizing the amount of leverage that they had. And then out of nowhere, the last few years, growth at the lowest cost, not even sustainable growth. Like, how can we grow at the lowest cost? That they started being more open and saying we need that leverage. That's Scotty plus the computer.
I love that. What are your thoughts, Whitney?
I think another influence here has been the way that customers and partners want to consume and purchase now from businesses, right? And so, shifting, I mentioned Salesforce, going back in time to a SaaS model and subscription, and now we're looking at consumption-based models and different ways to consume the products and services that we buy in the marketplace. And that has shifted dramatically from buying, bookings and static effects in a 4-year contract of something, right, to this different model, which requires a revenue fluidity to it. And so the systems we built are created to go do that. And it requires end to end. It requires that initial acquisition, some upsell retention. You're looking at NRR, different levers in your business, and you're looking across the whole cycle. Whereas before, you would just close a deal, you would hand it off, it would go to support, it would go there. So these shifting business models have also enabled the technology, right, that's necessary. But the operational capabilities to maintain that and keep that going have put a lot of the burden into RevOps, into these functions to go do that. I think, to the metaphor, Scotty has to keep the warp core going, the antimatter warp core of the ship, which does all the powering, all the weapons, life support and everything. And he's got to be up there on deck for, we need to go after Klingons and fire our phasers, right? And what happens when something goes offline? So you have to keep the engine humming, but you also have to navigate and change and shift models and do away missions and all these new things at a level of speed that's happening. Without the computer, without having automation in this space of bots and machine learning and ability to ask human questions, we can't move at that speed. So we're at a real critical inflection point in business, as you're saying. And what we're here to talk about today is, what is the people leadership role for RevOps in this space? It is so Scotty can actually come up onto the deck and know that the engines will still keep going and keep everything moving. That is the holy grail we're shooting for in this space.
Absolutely right.
And
So Whitney, do you want to, go ahead, Jared.
one thing I want to add, and I know we have AI's growing role in RevOps. This might be a good time to like just plant the seed, because business models are evolving with AI. Like forget just scale and using these tools. There's something called software as service. I've heard Dharmesh say results as a service. Oh my gosh. We're in a race. We're in a race to the bottom where results are more important. Sales doesn't focus on result. I mean, come on. Like, so that's requiring somebody else to bring people in, new motions, more of a focus towards ROI than ever, to the point where if you don't have ROI, you might not get paid in certain areas of where this is going. And that's interesting, right?
Very
I
much
do,
so.
maybe I'll just comment too also about sales and its evolving shift. And so I got introduced to Amy after I moved on from Equinix and got involved with Fullcast and the platform. Got so excited. I started talking to people about, do RevOps roles. I talked to a bunch of different companies. I got reintroduced to some folks from VeriSign and Symantec who were at ArcServe, and they were looking at a RevOps role. I said, oh, RevOps. But then I began to take a look at that and said, well, what is the sales? Where's your sales evolution in this space? What is that work that's there? Where are you in your go-to-market and the elements that are there? And I ultimately said, I want to do that sales go-to-market angle, right? Because when you're shifting the strategy, sometimes that RevOps and the functionality is on point, and sometimes it's a collaborative effect with your go-to-market teams, right? You are selling that concept really to the CEO. And that's the dialogue, right? We can transform the organization as we go forward for sales, for marketing, for customer care in conjunction with RevOps, but we have to do this in partnership. And sometimes I've been on the other side where I could go to that RevOps leader and do it. And that's what I've done at Archer. That's where I got excited about that, right? It is not a RevOps runs the world. It is a RevOps partners with the rest of the organization. So you win. And that's where the leadership role really is, and why being on the executive team really matters.
That's so, so important. Can you explain that a little bit more, Whitney? Like we're getting lots of hand claps coming up after that statement. The level of emotional intelligence, negotiation, partnership, some of those types of collaboration skills, as I've been interviewing different people in revenue operations, this keeps coming up more and more, is the importance of the ability to partner. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I think that's why the old historical sales ops engine room heads down keyboard role is really not the way forward, in terms of evolution, right? Because most of those keyboard striking elements that are happening in our world are going to be AI based in the future, right? A lot of the automation and what you do is going to come through bots, which is great, right? So I think of it this way: your people skills as a leader and a manager in RevOps are really about managing resources, right? It is managing services delivery across multiple functions. Sometimes it's humans, sometimes it's cross-functional departments, sales, marketing, finance, and others, and sometimes it's managing the executive team. That evolution of that and that leadership role is really now at that level because all those base functions and keyboard striking are getting automated, right? And so I had the good fortune to be in roles that allowed me to get to that altitude and learn and develop that skills. But if I would say that anything for anybody in RevOps, in addition to the technical skills, knowledge of the systems, is learning how to work cross-functionally with other people, engaging, thinking end to end, right? And being able to delegate and manage through delegated authority of different roles and functions. You don't control the whole universe as RevOps. You have your fingers in everything, but you don't control it.
I really like that. I think that's absolutely right. Some Dave in the chat said, totally agree. When there is tight alignment and partnership between RevOps and sales, there is growth. And
Yes.
I think that was so well said. Very well said.
And if your sales leader says, hey, I just need to do bookings, you have a problem, right? Because they don't need to do bookings, right? That might be one of their quota elements, but it's not just that. It's revenue, right? We all need to bring in the revenue to flow it through. So this slide here, we're talking about, the leadership is on end-to-end revenue metrics that matter, right? What are those core metrics for the business? Not bookings, not a lower level, task element. What are the ones that really drive the transformation of the business? Profitability. You were talking, Jared, about different levels of SaaS and how we're going, right? Those end-to-end metrics are the ones, if you can engage at that level and work across the team, are the ones that really cement you in that leadership role.
I love that. So we have a question in the chat that really aligns with this, Whitney, and what you're talking about. What do you do if RevOps is seen more of a support and tactical function rather than a leadership position?
So you go to the executive that you are most aligned to and say, what is the role that you need for this? What do you need to be delivered? I call it service delivery for this function that you're in. So if I'm the CMO or I'm the CEO or I'm the CFO, what do you need? And if you find out what their core business pains are, right, then that's where RevOps goes, right?
Mhm.
What you don't say is I have to do a whole bunch of reports and systems and processes in the engine room, and I'm not going to engage with you, right? You have to
Mhm.
go ask those questions. What does the business need? And then, just like any good operational person, you go solve that problem. If the
Mhm.
problem's up here and you have to build a plan to build it through there, right? I think that is the hardest thing for people, to go have that problem or have that question posed to an executive leader in a space, right?
Mhm.
When there it may not be an answer,
Mhm.
but if you look at the strategy or the QBRs or the annual sales kickoff, all that strategy is there. I was just sat in mine in ArcServe, and we have the executive strategy, the leadership team, what the investors want, what the business growth is, where the drivers are. You have all the data you need there, right?
Yeah.
To go and align. You have to just come up to here. It's not
Mhm.
down here, the number of calls the salespeople are making. It's up here, right?
Absolutely. When I have someone who is maybe a younger person on my team and they're very ambitious and I can tell they're very smart, what's especially impressive to me is when they look at the company metrics and they show how what they are doing is aligning with those KPIs and those goals. To me, that shows a lot of strategic capability. They're not just talking about what they're doing. They're talking about how what they're doing aligns with the company growth. And I think that's something that is maybe not totally natural when you're first getting into business. But that would I just basically saying what you're saying in a less
Yeah.
eloquent way, Whitney.
No, I think that's it. I think it's parsing through those core business metrics, going to the highest level you can, and having that conversation, right?
Mhm.
And I would also share to the folks in the chat, if you don't feel comfortable do that, go with someone else, go as a partner, go with someone in marketing. Like, so I'm
Mhm.
head of sales in Americas. I'm going to go with my marketing counterpart in the Americas and go to this dialogue, right? And
Mhm.
then we look across the globe. How do I do that across the globe, right? You're going to
Mhm.
go where you have your access point and have that dialogue, right?
Mhm. I love that. Jared, do you have any thoughts before you
Yeah,
move
so,
to the next
so
one?
I'm thinking like at like the objective and key results
Mhm.
level, right? You have the CRO or CEO setting the qualitative high level, the quantitative right under it. But shouldn't they just get the RevOps leader in the room at that point and be like, how are we doing this to help like align like right there, like versus come up with something like
But
shouldn't
but
they be in
look,
the room?
yeah, so you're already they're in the room, right? So you're making the
Mhm.
assumption that leadership agrees they should be in the room, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
How,
So we're
should they push in and be like, hey, like I see what you have here. This isn't
yeah.
feasible. Can we have a take two?
Mhm. That's
Well,
interesting.
usually what happens, that executive, that leader has
I know.
encountered where it broke before, and they learned that lesson, right?
Mhm.
I happen to be in a number of situations and organizations that went through a lot of change, a lot of transformation, where you had leaders that were forced to adapt and lean in and raise their hand for help. But sometimes you don't have that, right?
Mhm.
When you do, I think we're also making the point is, I think if you were to go talk to CEOs and executive leaders, they realize how fast the changes are happening, how they need insights at the business level, how they need strategic decision making, and they also need all the engine room to run, right? So
Mhm.
they understand that, right? If we
Mhm.
can posit that it's possible to do that, here's how you do it. Here are the platforms and the systems you use. Here's the leadership profile you need to engage, right? We will help deliver that solution.
I love it. So Whitney, this goes along with the next question that's in the chat. Does this shift to a RevOps model impact core metrics? It seems like success is redefined.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
So how would you say in your experience, how have you seen that change when a company has decided to go in and really invest in that revenue operations function?
I have found that if you can get the organization on, say, 10 to 12 core metrics, no more than 20, and that are
Mhm.
across functions, that they aren't marketing functions, they're not sales, they're not customer care, they're at that level, right? And then you have organized alignment on those OKRs, right? That is
Mhm.
it, right? Now that's a
Mhm.
serious, you have to have a common language to be able to do that. You have to have a
Mhm.
leadership organization that will work together to go do that. You have to have an operational team that can put that together and organize that, probably a platform to support that. done this many times. You need a reporting platform that gives you that data and those insights. You need a RevOps leader that understands across functions. You need the different sub functions or motion operational functions that support it to go do that, right? Your channel metrics may be different than your direct access metrics, right? And so then you come up to those higher level efficiency, productivity, retention rate, customer success metrics that are there. And if you can then ladder up each team into that, then you have the alignment that you need to go do.
I love it. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. RevOps is no longer just an operational function. It must play a strategic role in go-to-market execution. We've talked a little bit about some of the metrics that need to be redefined. We've talked a little bit about some of the people that, like how to kind of elevate your career. Whitney, what about the processes? How did these processes get redefined? And how would coming in as a RevOps leader change things around? Can you give us just like an example of something that's happened in your personal life?
Yeah. Well, I always like to talk a little about COVID. Everybody has a COVID story, right? So
Yeah.
I was at Equinix during COVID, and we had a lot of supply chain issues at Equinix, big data center infrastructure company, right? So lots of supply chain all over the world, right? And so you're then all of a sudden you begin to realize there's something going wrong here. We're doing lots more business, people are buying, but the revenue's not flowing through, right? So you have a process that may seem end to end, but what happens is oftentimes you'll be put in a situation with a crisis and you will realize it's not. There's some gap along the process that's there, right? And so when you bring and elevate to that top level, oh great, we're trying to improve order to cash, right, as a metric along that element for our supply chain for this set of customers, and you have a reporting platform that's been put in place to do that. Now you can go and figure out, okay, now what's happening? And go look at it, right? And that forcing has you look, well, I've changed the structure of my organization to go do it this way, but the whole world has changed. So now I need to relook at that structure again, right? I need to think of the processes. I need to look at the data. I need to think about where AI can help me along this journey, and you go do that. It is often a crisis. It's often an external situation or an event or an opportunity. We're going to go after this market with this product, and we're going to go gangbusters. And you learn, wow, it's not landing, right? And so think about it. If you were just siloed sales, marketing, customer care, doing little sub metrics, and MQLs and SQLs, and you're down at that layer, right? Versus I'm up at this higher level that engages, and I can go do that. The real challenge, sorry, last thing, the real challenge back to, your background is now you're touching people's fiefdoms, right? And their worlds and their little things, right? And so that's another reason why RevOps can be very powerful, because it's a neutral role. It doesn't have a quota, doesn't have a marketing goal. It is a neutral, trusted advisor role. When you look to Star Trek, Scotty is that guy can be like, hey, I'm just running the ship. Like I can be that neutral, where everybody else may have a point of view. And there's a real dynamic and an expertise to stay in that neutral, trusted advisor, Scotty role.
I love that so much. And this reminds me of when I used to work at a large healthcare company. There was a discussion that happened between, they did not have a RevOps function. And there was a discussion that happened between marketing and sales and IT. And I was off camera, just sitting in the meeting. Nobody knew I was there. And the IT team said, yeah, we're going to rip out the CRM and we're going to put in a different type of, it was more of like, it wasn't even a CRM, but there were a few of the CRM functions there. And somebody else said, well, I've been told by the sales team that it might affect their deal pipeline if they don't have a CRM to track. And the IT person said, I don't know how much I really care. That was really what he said out loud.
Wow.
But it really resonated with me, because a lot, it was pretty, like, kudos to him for saying what he really thought. But that shows that RevOps role that can see every single department and what every single department really needs would have saved a lot of pain and heartache in that situation. And so that is just one tiny little thing about, people having their fiefdoms and doing exactly what they want to in their department. that's bureaucracy at its peak. Those divided silos, those specialties, where
Yeah.
they have their own department metrics but no company metrics. And being able to elevate the RevOps role to be that trusted advisor, like you're saying, that has no stake in the game except to keep the enterprise running, to be able to be the neutral party to keep everything moving well. I think that is such an important role, and it is actually kind of mind-boggling to me that that role has not existed in the past.
I have a question. Isn't there stake, whatever the company's goals are? Like if the company's not hitting their goals, where like the RevOps person gets off scot-free if they're on the senior level?
No, it's a great point. No, I think you're right. That's not the case. But
When
there's
we're
no
talking about
deterrent.
RevOps being on the senior level, I want to
That's
make sure
true.
that they get senior heat. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you could go down.
I was talking a lot about, engaging in the go-to-market, right? Marketing, sales, customer care. But a lot of that function, as we're saying, is across, IT, product, the executive team to go do that. One of the things that I've done before is create a mix of the kind of business capability and architecture roadmap to go and build that over a period of time and hold that accountability with the executive team. Because a lot of time the changes what you need to deliver in this quarter and this week and this month may be different what you need to deliver in 6 to 9 months as you go forward. And holding that short-term perspective, I got to deliver on the number and hit that. And what are the architectural capabilities? AI, automation, different workflows, different process, organizational changes. What are those that are there? And that is where that executive RevOps role is so critical, because it is in that unique space between the go-to-market and IT and the product to hit those, as you said, Jared, those company goals, right? Here are the revenue goals. Here are the profitability goals. Here are the efficiency goals.
And
Well,
under
that's
RevOps is enablement too, right? Like
Yes.
so like how are you going to know that RevOps leader is enabling well if you don't have probably a revenue goal or a pipeline goal towards that, right?
Yeah.
Well, there have been revenue operations leaders who have said that their metric is revenue per employee. That's the one that they like to be metriced on. And I think that one's very interesting because it's a very good efficiency metric that speaks
Yep.
to what we do in RevOps.
Right. Not just go-to-market employees, all employees, right?
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
So I think you guys touched on a really, really important point. Another
I
important
love
point is
that.
something that Milan just said in the chat, and I'd love for both of you guys to comment on this. So if AI is going to free up time for RevOps to engage in strategic discussion, it really seems that we can almost pull the equal sign between CEO and RevOps leader.
I'm gonna
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm gonna skirt past that and go to a lot of people I've asked, they've asked, would you go in your career from RevOps? You've been in RevOps, what do you do next, right? I've always personally felt COO is the broader,
Yep.
longer term, C-level thing, which then puts it at that C-level, right? Very close. But
Yeah.
it does depend on the organizational structure and the team. I mean, we're referring to maybe CEO in a smaller company versus a much larger enterprises, right? So I think the question is not about the equal sign. I think it's about what's 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 on the executive team that equals 100, right? What is that multiplier effect? That's the uniqueness, in my opinion, of the revenue ops role. When you add it to a leadership team at whatever level you do, it is a multiplier effect because of the communication, neutral trusted advisor, and that end-to-end view that it lives in every day.
But
I love that.
I love that. But the CEO has can also be a zero in the equation if they're not because if think about this, like, so yes, and Millen's like comment is actually really astute. Like we're talking all day long, like the CEO is the true GTM leader. Like,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
it could also be the truest bottleneck, right? You could have a stellar RevOps leader that can't get past go and execute anything. So so the CEO needs to be perfectly aligned and needs to empower RevOps probably.
I have seen
Absolutely.
a lot of boards and investment teams go direct to RevOps to get insights that maybe they feel they're not getting from the executive team. So that's something you need to be very thoughtful of
That's
if you're going to be in this space. But where do I get the truth, right? And
Yeah.
so that's a tough challenge. I would say you align with your executive team and being transparent as possible, right? And there's a lot of good reasons for doing that.
I love that. That is so insightful. We have a free gift, you guys. To lean into the fact that we want to celebrate Scotty. Today it's all about celebrating Scotty and the relationship between Scotty and Kirk and the revenue.
Beam me up to the engine room, right? Beam me up to
the engine room. I know, I need to
the
get
engine room.
of that. Absolutely right. So
This-
in the chat for anyone in the session, if you would like to receive a pair of Star Trek socks as a thanks for attending the webinar, please go to that link and we'd love to send you a pair.
Also, side note, this Navigating the Final Frontier, like movie style poster in the background should not go without like being noticed. Because if you could print that out and you're a RevOps leader or soon to be RevOps leader, and you could position it right behind here as you're talking to your C-suite,
That's right.
It does the work for you, I promise.
Oh, absolutely. That's right. Well, I know we're running short on time, but Whitney, thank you so much for your expertise. It is so hard to find someone who has experienced so many of these roles, moving from revenue operations into head of sales, and you have such insightful perspectives and you articulate it all so well. And I really appreciate the chance for, to be able to pick your brain and get your thought leadership and perspective for me and for everyone else who's listening to the webinar on how we can grow our careers in RevOps and how we can grow our businesses with RevOps.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Everybody, you can do this. It's possible. Come on up to the bridge with the captain. Come on.
And Jared, I wanted to first, thank you so much. We love your community and we love working with you. Would you like to say any final thoughts? I'm going to turn it back to you, and this is your forum.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming by. Thank you, Amy. We wouldn't be here without you and without Fullcast. And I want to acknowledge that. I've already submitted 7 order forms for socks, so I can have it every day. And that may or may not be true. It probably more may than not. And yeah, we hope to see you in the community. We have lots of incredible things coming up, more stuff with Fullcast, more things with RevOps. Amy and Fullcast are leaning in. Well, let's throw some roundtables and stuff. Let the questions keep coming in Slack. Connect it with everybody on LinkedIn. And thank you all for your time. And don't forget, every CEO needs a RevOps leader. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Whitney.